All right, guys, so today in front of me from Barrell Craft Spirits, we have their Barrell Bourbon Batch number 33. So this one comes in at 116.6 proof, is aged for a minimum of 5 years, is distilled in Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. So this blend is a marriage of high rye and high corn mash bills, aging 5, 6, 7, and 9 years. The profile they're looking for from the high rye offered a lot of baking spice and peppery forward profile, and the high corn barrels offered a butterscotch, coffee, and citrus profile. So they blended them two together for 2 months, and out came the batch 33. Definitely excited to get into this one, as I am with all Barrell products, guys. So without further ado, let's go. So as I stated, this one is aged 5, 6, 7, and 9 years and comes in at 116.6 proof. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. So the first thing that I get is it is very baking spice forward on the nose. There's a lot of nice undertones there with some of those fruity flavors as well. Nice peach, a nice pear there as well. Kind of the undertones there on the nose. There is a very subtle nuttiness note that's a little bit further into the glass, and I do pick up just a hint of like a dry leather. Very, very interesting nose. It's very different from the last couple batches that I've tried. Again, that nuttiness, maybe a walnut or a pecan. And then again, some of that like dry leather there further into the glass. Further away from the glass, I pick up some nice vanilla, some caramel. You start to pick up some of those undertones of some of those fruits, those underlying aromas like some pear and some peach. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of citrus there too on the nose. I pick up almost like a little bit of a lime and just a slight hint of maybe almost like a grapefruit. So very, there's like the citrus side to it, and then further into the glass, there's some nuttiness and a little bit of dry leather, almost indicating, some of those older barrels, that were pulled for this blend. Really nice nose, guys. Get to the palate. Cheers. Whew. That is, so, the initial burst of kind of like rye spice there on the middle of the palate. It doesn't punch you hard with it. Definitely drinks its proof. A lot of sweetness on the front of the palate. And then like there's this spicy citrus that sits there right on the sides of the palate. A lot of spice. Some of that lime comes into influence there, like I got on the nose. Some of that lime, like a spicy lime. Definitely some baking spices for sure. This is baking spice heavy there on the mid palate. Nutmeg, some allspice starting to come about there with some of that lime. It's like a spicy lime. And into the finish, I get a slight hint of like a chocolate, almost like a milk chocolate, like a Nesquik or something. The finish is, it's a medium finish. Really nice first sip. Offer a lot of different spices, a lot of different flavors there on a first sip. Let's get into the second one, guys. So that second sip definitely changed a little bit, but there was still some consistency with the flavors that I was pulling out before. Again, a little bit of lime there on the sides of the palate, and then some of those baking spices there on the center, the allspice, the nutmeg, and then into the back again. It's very different for me. It's like this chocolate, sassafras, and like a slight hint of mint that kind of flows through into the back of the palate and into the finish. A very odd mixture of flavors there. I don't think I've ever pulled out any kind of like sassafras before, from Barrell anyway. But I love the finish. The back of the palate and into the finish on this one is just there's so many different flavors going on, because you have these undertones of fruit that kind of flow from the front all the way into the back of the palate, but they're not dominant. Those fruit flavors aren't dominant. So like again, on the front it's like some vanilla, some caramel, but then that's when those fruits really start to kind of pop up. Again, some of that pear for sure. And they kind of flow all the way through, but they're not so dominant that they take over the other flavors. They don't take over those baking spices and the lime, that citrus there, that spicy citrus that sits on the sides. And they don't take over that chocolate, that powdered chocolate, the sassafras on the back end of the finish, like a slight hint of mint, like a chocolatey mint mixed with some sassafras. Yeah, and I mean a medium finish. You know, it kind of lingers on for a little while. This one took me by surprise here. This is damn good. Let's get the last sip, guys. Cheers. So, again, it started to change a little bit, but again, those flavors, a lot of the flavors there are still consistent. So one thing that I didn't point out in my first two sips, it has a really nice viscosity to it. It definitely sticks around the palate on like the front of my gums here, and then on the sides of my cheeks. Again, so front of the palate, you have your vanillas, your caramels, but then there's these these subtle notes of fruit. Definitely some pear in there for sure. Almost maybe a slight hint of like a red apple. And then center of the palate is it's spicy citrus is how I would put it. It's some lime, and then definitely some baking spices, some allspice, some nutmeg. And then into the back of the palate, I just picked up a very, very slight hint of some of that leather, like a dry leather there, mixed with some of like that powdered chocolate, some sassafras, maybe a little hint of black pepper and some mint there as it goes down. I mean, just again, just really all over the flavor wheel. But this is a very, very unique batch of Barrell here, because there's some flavors in here that I've never pulled out of any Barrell before. Again, some of that spicy citrus, that lime. I don't get a lot of lime on things. And then a sassafras note too is something that was, I didn't really get that on the first sip, but then like the second and third sip, I really pulled out that sassafras and that chocolatey mint, a little bit of pepper, and then some dry leather there on the back. This may be one of my favorite batches of the Barrell bourbon that they've put out so far. I think it's extremely unique. How the flavors really come about on the palate. Constantly evolving. I'm pulling out something else each and every time I sip it, but yet it maintains the consistency from sip to sip to sip. So big fan here of this Barrell Bourbon Batch number 33. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Barrell Craft Spirits for supplying me with this bottle here to review on the channel. Guys, so a couple things here. So number one, I think this may be one of my favorite batches of Barrell bourbon they've put out. They've put out a ton of hitters for their standard bourbon releases. It would be hard to pick one. I would have to do them in a blind to see what I come up with. A couple blinds, because one blind just doesn't do it. But this, as far as like how unique it is, and some of those flavors that are just new to me from Barrell, I think this one really kind of shines through as one of my favorites, if not my favorite. It really hits everything that I'm looking for in a bourbon. Complexity, something that evolves. It's at a great proof point, and it's a lot of flavors that I enjoy pulling out of a bourbon. Some of those older, darker flavors, some of that leather, and then you get some of that chocolate into the back, while there's still some undertones of some of those fruity notes, that spicy citrus with that lime there on the center of the palate. As far as a whiskey score on this one, I would put this at a 7.6. This is a fantastic batch of Barrell bourbon here. Again, just offers such uniqueness and complexity and depth. A lot of different layers to this one. Again, I think this is a great. Not only is this a great bottle for experienced barrel lovers, but I think this would be a great introduction into barrel bourbon as well. Again, I think it offers everything really: a great spice, a great balance, great complexity, again, great depth. This would definitely make a great starter, bourbon for someone looking to get into barrel bourbon. So guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.